Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. So I'm kind of feeling a bit like I'm going through a phase right now. I feel like I go through phases of video content. So right now I'm really into just doing dramatic readings of things. Who knows what next week's phase will be? Rap covers perhaps. Do you mind? Therefore, bearing this new phase in mind, back in January I wrote a short erotica, a novella about Piers Morgan shagging a vegan sausage roll. It did alright in terms of sales. I got onto Good Morning Britain. Piers Morgan's bemused face is forever etched in like my memory. Seeing myself and my older, smaller lips on national TV, morning TV. Yeah, that was one for the books. So I figured today what I would do is do a dramatic reading of the story in question, the story that I wrote. For the newer viewers who are unaware of this like weird thing I did, basically Piers Morgan is a TV presenter and he's always mad about things and he really doesn't like vegans or vegan food. He thinks it's an abomination, an affront to God. So I thought I would just be a bit of a wind up, and also the whole point of it was to parody the fact that newspapers like the Metro or the Sun or whatever will write about anything that isn't newsworthy. You guys should know by now I do a series called Clown World in which I look at news that ain't news but somehow is on the news, and I, in a moment of brilliance, decided to break that fourth wall and get onto the news by doing something stupid. Here we are. I'm going to read you the story which I wrote about Piers Morgan. The following story is a work of pure fiction / satire dreamt up after too much coffee at 4 AM, and any similarities to celebrities living or dead is entirely coincidental. Piers Morgan's vegan lover. And that's the story of how a dog learnt to play the piano even though it only had one paw. Isn't that lovely, Piers? Susanna Reid, a popular newscaster for Good Morning Britain, turned to her red-faced co-host who was, as always, offended by something. No, Susanna, that isn't lovely at all. That dog looks like it wants to be put out of his misery and I'd happily be the one to do it. Why am I laughing at something that I wrote? Oh, this is peak arrogance. This whole video is just literally the equivalent of me masturbating. Piers' jowls wobbled threateningly at the dog sitting in the studio next to its owner, who began to retort something but Piers cut him off. Go on, hop off the pair of you. People will do anything to get onto Britain's Got Talent. Bet you cut off that dog's legs yourself. It was a freak fire accident at Sea Parks. The dog owner's eyes began to well up at the memory all those summers ago, but they were ushered off of the live studio currently being broadcasted to millions of Britons at 8:30 AM by two production assistants. Their two-legged dog hopped off after them. Somewhere, Ofcom was already receiving its lot of daily complaints about Piers Morgan. Sometimes sternly worded letters were written to GMB and promptly thrown in the bin. Controversy meant ratings, that's what the head director always said, and Piers was an expert at bringing in the controversies. Right, Susanna brightened up. Moving on to our next piece, Greggs, the popular bakery chain, had set tongues wagging earlier this year with the release of their specialty item, the vegan sausage roll. I wrote this and yet I can't fucking talk. The vegan sausage roll. It certainly had quite the reaction in this studio. Susanna threw her head back in laughter, white teeth glistening in the bright studio lights, but Piers Morgan paid her no heed. He could see her. There, on the back of a newspaper that had been carelessly left around on an empty stall, was an advertisement featuring the one. I can't talk today, I don't know what's going on. I mean, I can't talk like any day, but this is particularly bad today, isn't it? Featuring the one Piers Morgan hated above all else. Golden, beautiful, mocking. White hot anger flashed before his eyes and he let out a guttural snarl. Susanna jumped. Flashbacks over Greg, she started, but was cut off. Piers had a habit of doing that to her, his ex-wife, the milkman, anyone. This segment is over. I'm not sitting in the same room as that filth, he barked, much like a two-legged dog, and left his seat in fury. A producer ran after him, which wasn't difficult as Piers couldn't move very fast. The producer ambled, meandered, strolled, but certainly did not run. Bloody hell, Piers, you can't just leave the studio like that. The show is live. Who am I going to get on such short notice to cover you now? All things considered, the producer was being rather polite about the ordeal instead of doing what he actually felt like doing, which was throwing Piers into the Thames. Not my problem, give Jeremy Kyle a ring. I'm sure he's not busy right now. Piers rounded on the producer and poked an accusatory finger at him. Why are you leaving crap around my studio anyway? I'll be back once you sort your shit out. The producer rubbed his forehead with his fingers as he felt more wrinkles growing in. He was averaging a new wrinkle per week since taking on the responsibility of looking after Piers Morgan. Ah well, he thought, could be worse. Could be looking after Jeremy Clarkson. This story is really British, by the way. Like, lots of British references. For the uninitiated, Jeremy Clarkson famously got kicked off of Top Gear because he punched a producer in the face. In the face. Piers turned and left the ITV studios. It was early December and the weather was frigid. The cold, icy fingers dug into Piers' flushed cheeks as he shivered into his Gucci scarf. Piers enjoyed the winter. It made him feel festive, charitable even. A time of year for reflection, mulled wine and goodwill to all men. Spare some change, a beggar was hanging around the front of ITV studios and beckoned towards Piers with one hand open-palmed and outstretched. His gloves were warm with holes. "Get a bleeding job," Piers yelled. I don't know why I'm laughing. Remember, I wrote this at 4 a.m, so I don't know why I'm laughing. Sticking his hand out to call for a taxi. Worthless beggars don't know what it's like to work a 9 to 5 every day, he mumbled to himself whilst the gold Rolex on his wrist read the time, 8:33 a.m. A taxi stopped for him, but his heart sank. Wrapped around the outside of the taxi was her again, the thing he despised above all else. However, there is a thin line between hate and love. The taxi driver rolled down his window. "Where to, Piers?" he asked with a smile, not believing his luck. A TV star in his cab? He'd tell his grandkids about this one day. The children would sit in a circle around him to ask for the 50th time that morning to tell them about the time he took a high-profile celebrity for a cab ride and then became best mates with the celebrity and then got taken to a celebrity party where he met Grandma. Piers popped this dream immediately. "Piss off, you've got muck advertised all over your cab." The cab driver spat out the window at Piers and screeched up the road, wheels spinning in fury and a slight hint of melancholy. Melons over the future grandkids he had just loved and lost. Where one cab left, another took its place immediately, and this time, thankfully, with no shit advertised on the outside, just respectable wraparound adverts for Papa John's Pizza. Piers bundled himself into the back of the cab and gave the taxi driver his home address. "Bad day at work?" the driver asked to make conversation, and Piers groaned. "They don't pay me enough to put up with their rampant unprofessionalism," he replied. The taxi driver, who made less in 10 years than Piers made in one, nodded along sympathetically. Bored of all the chit-chat, Piers looked out the window in what he assumed was a pensive silence. Gah! He pulled back from the window in horror. There it is again! But it was gone in an instant. The image that was haunting Piers throughout this trying morning. The image that sometimes crept into the darkest corners of his consciousness as he lay sleeping at night, vulnerable to its seduction, and he would sometimes awaken pitching a tent and not know why. He shifted in his seat as his cheeks went even redder, but not from the cold. The cab driver glanced at Piers in his rearview mirror and doubled his driving speed. Best to be rid of nutters quickly. Piers shielded his eyes and did not look up until he was back home, back in the safety of his Georgian townhouse in Kensington. He didn't tip the cab driver because they get paid enough, thank you very much, and he headed inside his property where he made quick work of drawing all the curtains so as to not get any nasty surprises from cars passing by. Piers sat by himself in the darkness, a still silhouette who would have been mistaken for a statue by any peeping Toms. He sat utterly petrified for at least 15 minutes. Maybe even 20 minutes, as he grappled with what he was about to do before his hand slowly crept forward to the magazine that some maid had left on the coffee table. He made a mental note to fire her later. Licking a finger, he slowly thumbed through the magazine until he found the advertisement that had been stalking him all day. "My golden angel," he spoke softly, fingers tracing the image lightly, sensually in fact. He admired the soft curves and the way the light rested on her dry skin. "Be good for Daddy." With one hand slowly stroking the paper, his free hand crept into his £3,200 Tom Ford suit trousers and he began to touch himself. His meat was so hard and stiff. He began to pump himself softly at first, and then with increasing urgency as his free hand rubbed the magazine in a state of frenzy. He began to moan. He could feel himself coming undone, until he could barely take it any more, and he quickly pulled his suit trousers down so he could relieve himself all over the glossy magazine. Well, glossier. He chucked it in the bin. "Shouldn't be left out anyway," he grumbled before taking himself to bed. It had been a very long day. I've just realised I'm going to hell for writing that. The next morning, as Susanna Reid was having her hair and makeup done, the producers were in a bit of a stir. As she glanced over the morning's schedule, a baby elephant at London Zoo had just learned sign language and they were going to attempt to ask said elephant whether they agreed with last night's X Factor results. She gazed at herself in her dressing room mirror, enamoured with her own beauty. If she had been more observant, she would have spied assistants running around frantically past her open dressing room door. Instead, she fell into her own reflection. "I would do me," she murmured softly. "You what, love?" her hairstylist said. "Did you say something?" "Oh," Susanna simpered, cheeks flushing. "Nothing important." Susanna took one last look at herself in the mirror before departing for her usual seat. Curiously, Piers was nowhere to be found. Probably topping up his fake tan, Susanna thought to herself, not to anyone else because she isn't telepathic, and jostled her papers. Somewhere in the studio she could hear the distant trumpeting of the baby elephant, the first interviewee of the day. Susanna shifted in her seat and took a sip of water. The minutes ticked by. Where is he? Is he bloody hungover again? Susanna snorted to herself and caught the attention of an assistant nearby, whom quirked an eyebrow at her. "Where's Piers?" she mouthed. The assistant shrugged in response, utterly unbothered, too focused on his own issues. He was pretty sure his neighbour kept putting their rubbish into his recycling bin, as his recycling bin was always mysteriously full, and to tell you the truth, he didn't even recycle that much, so should he have a word with them? On one hand, it's good that they were trying to do their bit for the environment, but on the other hand, sod off and use your own damn bin. "I'll leave a sternly worded note on the inside of the bin lid," he thought. Something along the lines of, "To whomever it may concern, please do not use my..." Oh, what does Susanna want? No idea. Best shrug so it looks like I'm paying attention. She looks fit today. I'd give her one. Susanna tapped the table with her well-manicured nails. "We are on in 1 minute," the director yelled out. "For goodness sakes, where the hell is Piers?" Susanna shouted finally. "No clue, love. Fuck it. We've got him covered." The director pushed Jeremy Kyle onto the stage. "Look, Jezza, this is your last ride on the merry-go-round. Don't fuck it up." "Right." Jeremy Kyle sat down next to Susanna. "Listen, love, this isn't the Piers Morgan show anymore. This is the Jeremy Kyle show from now on. And 10 seconds, the director screamed, red in the face, close to blowing an artery. "So what I think is we should have that baby elephant take a lie detectors test, because personally, I don't buy that it can actually do sign language, not one jot. Don't bring that bloody thing on yet," the director had begun screeching as the baby elephant broke free of its handlers and trundled towards Susanna and Jeremy. Susanna screamed and ducked under the table. "Fuck it, we're live, fuck it, let the elephant destroy this studio for all I fucking care." The director keeled over and wheezed, clutching at his chest. He wasn't having a heart attack though. His heart beat on throughout this miserable existence through pure spite alone. "Right, listen you," Jeremy began waving an envelope he had procured from nowhere at the elephant. "I have the results right here, but first..." The baby elephant began waving his trunk in front of Jeremy's face. "What's this?" "He's calling you a wanker, Jez," one of the handlers shouted. "Oh, where is Piers?" Susanna groaned with her head in her hands from under the table. Susanna was in a taxi on the way to Piers' house. Good Morning Britain were in for a right bollocking. Ofcom had received a record-breaking 25 complaints about the pandemonium that had happened this morning. 20 of those were about animal cruelty. The viewers found it horrendous that any poor animal would have to suffer being near Jeremy Kyle. Hashtag Good Morning Britain is over party was trending on Twitter, and news outlets all over the internet had already published several articles on the fiasco. The Metro had interviewed a 51-year-old divorcee who said the ordeal had made her so upset that she couldn't finish her cornflakes. It's like I forget what I've written. At least I find myself funny. And the Daily Mail had already written up 5 articles about how genetically blessed Susanna Reid's tits were. Jeremy Kyle had been banished from ITV forever. Some say you could see him begging for an internship outside of Channel 4 with a big bushy beard, even though this has only happened 30 minutes ago. The director of Good Morning Britain was on the first flight to Lanzerhof in Hamburg to recharge his batteries and cheat death once more. Where had Piers been all morning? He wasn't answering any calls or Snapchats or texts, and Susanna was beginning to get a bit worried. There was a brief moment in time where, over too many glasses of a £40,000 bottle of red, Susanna and Piers had found themselves in a compromising situation when pulses ran high and lust overcame them, but they had decided to remain just work colleagues. But sometimes, like now, as worry ebbed at her heart, Susanna found herself thinking of that night at the Mayfair Arts Club. Sure, Piers was brash, loud, heartless, annoying, too fake-tanned, arrogant, could be mistaken for the younger brother of Donald Trump. But my God, he wore a nice suit. "Here is fine." Susanna signalled to the taxi driver who pulled over. She got out of the cab without saying thank you and tottered up to the front door, heels clacking against the cobbled streets in a satisfying way. She knocked 3 times, but there was no answer. "Piers!" she shouted, then stopped herself in embarrassment. What if the neighbours saw? She had a suspicion David Beckham lived on this road, and that was the last thing she needed. She went to knock again, but instead turned the ornate door handle and found the door creaked open, unlocked, Freudian slip. Her heart began to throw itself against her ribcage. Something wasn't right. "Hello, are you home?" She let herself in. The interior of the house was as dark as the inside of a Hollister outlet. She stumbled over a package and swore loudly as the pointed end of her heel got caught in a paper bag that had been left discarded. She kicked it off her shoe and switched on the light, but the house stayed black. She swallowed hard and moved through the hallway blindly, arms outstretched in front of her. She felt for the wooden banister and made her way up the stairs, slowly, step by step. Her eyes began to adjust to the darkness, and she could faintly see the portraits Piers had of himself adorning the walls alongside the stairs. There was an old wedding photo from his first marriage, kept purely because he thought he looked buff in it. But his ex-wife had her face blocked out by, well, Susanna could not tell what. It looked as though someone had cut out a piece of a newspaper and stuck it over his ex-wife's mug. Susanna realised with a slight jolt that all of Piers' photographs had been changed in this manner. She screwed up her eyes to see what the cut-ins were. A loud moan emanated from above, like a wounded animal in its death throes, unable to escape the curtain of mortality. God, I'm good. Piers! Susanna yelled and began to run up the stairs, stumbling over her heels. The groaning became louder the closer she came, because that's how sound worked, and she made her way over to Piers' bedroom door. Behind it, Piers was breathing as heavy as a pig drowning in porridge. Terrifying images flashed through Susanna's mind. Had he been stabbed? Mugged? Was it a heart attack? He did get angry a lot, and... "You little tart!" Piers yelled through the door, and Susanna felt her stomach constrict in black rage. "That's it, how dare you! I'm coming in." Steeling herself for the worst, she burst through the door to find Piers Morgan crouched over his bed, naked, with his penis dick deep inside a sausage roll. Empty Greg's packages littered his once fine room. It was the scene of a bakery bombshell. Piers was covered in flaky pastry. Sausage meat was stuck all over his hands as he thrust his own sausage around, if you know what I mean. He was grunting, his body pouring with perspiration, droplets of sweat rolling down his forehead and red cheeks as he pumped himself frantically into the nation's favourite role. It took him a few seconds to realise he was not alone. He looked up in abject horror at Susanna, whose ears were suddenly ringing and vision was beginning to dim. "I can explain," he began weakly, but did not stop thrusting his meat around. Susanna's knees became too weak to hold herself up, and as she collapsed to the floor, she caught the writing on the receipt stapled to the Greg's packet. 20 corn vegan sausage rolls. And with that, she fainted. The end. A little footnote I put at the bottom of this. Alizee has a PhD in the study of modern British anthropology and often refers to herself as the Kanye West of comedy. Only God can judge me for the sins I've just committed. And it's true. And that is the story I wrote that went kind of viral and ended up on Good Morning Britain. I hope you enjoyed that. I am trying to be a writer. Well, I write, so I guess I write, therefore I am a writer. Technically, that's a published work, isn't it? My writing is very, very, very British. I'm currently working on a story about a reptilian who causes Brexit. It's true. About halfway done with that. I hope to have it finished this side of this year, and who knows, potentially get it published. I would want to try to go through the, you don't care, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I would want to try to go traditionally published for that. It's very kind of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy-esque, so there might be a market for it, who knows. Anyway, that was my short ebook. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you like this video, do remember to like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Instagram /Alizee. I need more followers on there. I make new videos whenever I feel like it, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.